The following conversation is with Guy Cordon of Landing Strip Lofts. Guy has been mentored by Frank Mcclaflin and also competes up in the Boston concourse area, as well as flying in one lofts. Guy goes over some of the trial and error that he's experienced during his pigeon journey and what he's learned along the way. I think you're going to really enjoy this interview, and I appreciate Guy's time. If you want, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of this interview. Thank you. All right. Guy Cordon, right? Quartarone.
Yes.
Landing Strip Loft. Thank you for coming on, man. I've been looking forward to this. We need more young guys in the sport, so I'm looking forward to hearing your story.
Yeah, not a problem. Happy to be here.
So how did it begin for you? I know you're mentored by Frank Mcclaflin, but did it begin before that for you?
Yeah, so I guess it started with my dad. He had pigeons in the city. He grew up in Boston and he joined the army. He was there for 5 years. And then obviously he got married, had us, and he wanted us to get involved with the pigeons because he loved them. It kept him out of trouble in the city. So we went down to one of the pigeon clubs, which is the Rhode Island Pigeon Club. And on the bulletin, there was a loft. It was free loft, 10 by 18. And he got that for us. And we picked up our first pigeons. I think I was 5 years old. I picked up a couple blacks, some yellows, some whites, some fancy birds. And I was hooked from the get-go.
Oh, yeah. Well, 5 years old, then you've been in it your whole life. So at what point did you start? Did your dad kind of get you racing in the club or anything like that? Where did that begin?
So it's funny. I don't know if you remember the documentary, it was Taking on Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched that on my TV and I was like, Dad, we got to try this. We got to race pigeons. Like, this is so cool. Because I mean, we used to just let them loft fly, nothing crazy, but
Yeah.
we're seeing them like they got them going like hundreds of miles. I'm like, this is so cool. Like, we have to try this. So we went back down to the Rhode Island Club again and we joined down there. And that's how we started. It's basically because of that documentary.
Yeah, I remember Mike was like, if I was in the ring with this guy, I'd beat him up, but in pigeons, he can beat me, and that one guy beat him or whatever. Yeah, I enjoyed that series. So, at what point, where did you get your birds and did you start kind of racing competitively? Is that kind of when you met Frank or was that before that?
Yeah, so I mean, up until probably until I met Frank, I was only flying a couple races a year. I mean, I didn't have my license for the first like 5 or 6 years I was flying. So, I mean, my dad would take him to work, which is, 10 miles. We'd put him on a truck to go to the race, and we really didn't have a chance. So, when I started competitively flying, I finally had my license and I had an option in our high school for senior project where we could work the semester instead of going to classes. And I hated school just as much as anyone else did. And I said,
Right.
well, if I can play with pigeons all day, I said, that'd be great. So I emailed Frank. I didn't even know him. He flew in another club. And I was like, hey, this is what the school is offering. It's 25 hours a week. If you have work for me, great. If not, no worries. And, he took me under his wing and I was like, man, it's a whole new level. Before you even realize it, I was, oof. I
So
was
he
buying.
brought you in, was good with it, brought you in right away. And how old were you when this happened? High school?
Yeah, so I was 17 when I started working for Frank.
So what was the biggest eye-opening moment when you stepped into Frank's loft and started learning from him?
Well, the first day I met Frank, it'll be 5 years on April 5th. So we're coming up here. I got to handle my first imports because he was doing the importing business and everything.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, I'm seeing these shipments of whatever, 300 imports come in. And I'm like, man, like I've never even handled a pigeon this nice before in my life. And I'm seeing rooms of hundreds of them.
Right.
And I was like, the birds I have at the time, I'm like, these are nothing compared to these birds. And then Frank brought me over to his house and he said, okay, like this is the freak. And he walked through and he showed me all his best breeders and his best racers. And I was like, man, I gotta get better birds. And it's been a crazy ride so far. As you know, it never ends.
Oh yeah. There's always that quest for more pigeons, better
Oh
pigeons,
yeah.
continuing to improve. So did he say, this is what a good pigeon feels like, this is my best breeder, or did you kind of pick up this is what good pigeons feel like? What kind of teachings did he give you that kind of expanded your knowledge on pigeons, racing pigeons?
Yeah. So, well, before I raced pigeons, I used to show pigeons. So, I mean, we used to look for show qualities. We'd want them to be nice and fat. We want them to like look pretty and
Right.
perfect. And he basically told me that's not what you want in a racing pigeon. So when I handled some of his best racers, I was like, wow, these are all light. And Frank always talks about he wants his birds to feel like an empty water bottle. They want them to be rounded out, buoyant, quirky. And when I handled all his best racers, I was like, wow, like it's just there was night and day difference between what I had and what he had. And then over time of just we'd ship birds at his house. This is the one I like. I don't really like this one. I like this one. And eventually over time with the thousands that we've handled, I've kind of figured out what I like, which is basically what he's taught me.
Right. So he would kind of say, this bird feels ready for the race, this bird doesn't. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So when I started with him, it was actually during his old bird season. And I remember watching, he had like 25 birds come from the 300 in like 8 minutes.
Wow.
And he marched me right in the loft. He said, well, this is the first bird in. It didn't even feel like it raced. I
Right.
mean, I would have shipped it right back the same day.
Yeah.
I mean, my birds, when they were coming home, they were all like half dead because I mean, they weren't trained, they weren't properly fed. And he basically showed me everything that I've learned
Yeah.
over time.
Frank's awesome. And I really love his approach. And um, I've always told people when they're starting out to find somebody in their area that you can go and handle their birds. And if you handle enough good pigeons, you start to have that blueprint in your hands to where anywhere you go, no matter which loft you go to, you can handle and say, okay, I know this is
Yeah.
similar to what I've held in the past. That's good. There's all sorts of different kinds of pigeons, body and flights and all that stuff that goes to evaluating pigeons. But there is some common traits that you can immediately feel. Do you know what I'm saying? When you put a pigeon in your hands, it takes you back to other pigeons that you've handled.
Yeah. No, I mean, I still remember when I handled the freak for the first time. And there's the freak and cool dude Michael. Those are like two of his best racing hens, breeding hens. And they still felt like they could go to a 500 and win it when I handled them. And now, I mean, I'm lucky enough to own the freak, but the first time I handled them, they were like nothing I've ever handled before. And he's already showed me some of his best racers, some of his best breeders. And I feel like now, like I compare pigeons to pigeons like those. I'm like,
Right.
well, this bird had this one doesn't have that. I like this more on this one. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely made me a lot harder on my selection,
Sure. Well,
much harder.
that's as good of a mentor as you can have. So, how long did it take during your internship with Frank before you started kind of seeing results and your loft start to improve? Did you start using his systems? Did you change out pigeons to where you had that type of quality? What happened from there?
Yeah, so I mean, it was I would say pretty much right away. I saw improvements. I mean, I was feeding breeder conditioner and sending them to races. Like I was feeding them all they wanted. And he basically wrote out his system, what he does, his feeding and everything. I was getting birds that I never would have got to score. I was getting them in tough 300s. I was getting them in 200s. I was winning money in the 350s in the futurity. So, I mean, right away, even with the quality of pigeons that I had, I was still getting good results. And then I said, you know what? I got to get better birds. And he gave me a group of late breds that
Yeah.
pretty much has founded my loft since then.
So really, getting them the right condition, right health, the way their body was corky and light, like you were saying, that immediately was the biggest impact to start out with. Then you decided, okay, if I can improve what I have pigeon wise, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm grateful for all the birds that I've gotten in the past from guys in the club, but I mean, I always say like guys aren't going to give you birds that you can beat them with.
Sure.
So I said, if I can get better birds and I can start looking elsewhere and find better birds, I can keep up with these guys. I
Yeah,
mean, most of these guys have been flying pigeons longer than I've been alive.
exactly.
So I mean, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage with that because I mean, they know what they need to do. They have their family, they have their systems. So for me, it's just been trying to just, I mean, I look every day. I handle everything every day, see if I can find what I like.
I think you're a perfect blueprint for whether it's somebody young or maybe older getting into the sport on how to go about it. Because if you do get a good mentor in your area, you do learn what a good pigeon is and how to keep them healthy in the right system and how to keep their weight right. People can start out hitting the ground running, doing really well, versus guys that have been flying for longer than you and I have been alive, but um, maybe they're stuck in their ways and still are racing a certain way that can be beat, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, being continuing to look and be hungry on information, be hungry for continuing to improve your pigeons, all that. That's awesome, and that's a great way for people to start. And in my past interviews with people, everybody says, look for guys in your area that you can that are doing what you're wanting to do. So I think you reaching out to Frank was awesome and a great move for sure. Do you have a distance that you prefer flying in the club level? Do you have a favorite distance?
Well, I mean, I haven't really been able to fly old birds much because I just graduated college. So I was playing college
Congrats on that.
baseball. Thank you. Yeah. So I was playing college baseball for the 4 years. So I didn't have time to fly old birds. So really the last 4 years for me have just been young birds. So I mean, I guess, I mean, the longer the races and young birds I've liked, the threes, the 350s. But I
Right.
think I've had more of my success at like the 200s and the 250s. I'm
Yeah.
not sure why, but I seem to do better in that range than the longer ones. That's where I've won more of my combines than anything.
That's interesting. So now that you're graduated, are you gonna do more old bird flying, do you think?
Yeah, so I saved, well, whatever convention birds were left at the end of the season that people didn't want back, that's what I'm going to start with this year. So this will be, I guess, really my first season flying old birds. So it's going to be pretty exciting.
Well, we'll have to keep track on how you're doing with it, and that'll be fun for, I'm sure, for people to hear
Yeah,
how it's going for you. What what'd you play in baseball? What position?
I was a pitcher.
Oh yeah, through the heat. Did you have the
Uh,
curve?
I tried. I definitely tried. I mean, I tore my rotator cuff my junior year, and I had other things lined up to progress my baseball career, but it didn't end up working out. But yeah, I like to think I threw hard, but I mean, there's always a bigger fish in the sea.
Sure. Yeah. Um, what's your morning routine with the birds whenever I know you help. Do you work with Frank on the auction site? Is that part of what you do?
Yeah. So pretty much Monday through Friday, I work with Frank. We're up at his house. We're whatever. If we're photographing, shipping, we're posting. We're always doing something. But I'm usually there, Monday through Friday. So, well, I guess today, like if I were to go into Frank's, I wake up, I feed the breeders, I do my book, feed the young birds, whether I'm vaccinating, doing something, putting down more minerals, grit, and then I pretty much leave and I go to Frank's for the day after that.
You guys get to work on whatever you have going on that day.
Yeah, there's always something. There's never a dull moment.
Yeah, I bet. What is your process with your young birds as far as once they wean? Are you vaccinating right away? Are you taming them down by feeding them, when you're there? I mean, you said you're in college, so time was probably tough for you on how much you could spend out there, but what did you like to do from that standpoint?
Yeah, so for me, I used my weekends in college to come back and I'd clean the lofts, I'd vaccinate the babies. So I still do it now because I think it keeps me sane. I pick one day of the week where I go in and I grab all the babies, I put them in a crate, and then I'll vaccinate them for the PMV adeno circo. I like that vaccine. It's worked out well. And then I pox them. So I'll put them in the young bird loft. So everything that goes into the young bird loft, they've been vaccinated for PMV and they've been poxed. So
And you
there's
do
no
that at
question
the
for
same
me.
time?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do. I mean, if I can get them to be around 30 days old when I wean them, great. I mean, sometimes, if it just falls on a different day, then they might be 35 days, but I try it 30 days. That's usually my goal.
So once they're weaned in their section, what do you start doing from there and feeding and getting them ready to trap train and all that?
Well, see, I guess my systems in college were a little different than what they are now. So in college, I mean, I wouldn't start letting them out until I got out of school in the spring, it was like May 10th, like somewhere around that second weekend of May. So I would come home and I'd take that whole week to get their body weight down and trap train them, and then I'd let them out. But I pretty much just fed them all they want because I mean they're still growing. They got to molt out their flights, they got to do their bodies. So we pretty much feed them all they want. We feed them the Versalaga Champion,
Hmm.
and we'll mix that in with the energy. That's usually our two mixes, and then they've got like every possible mineral ever in existence in front of them.
Yeah,
So there's nothing that they're missing in there at all times.
that's good. Yeah, especially as they're growing and developing, and those minerals help digest that into their energy that they use to produce that. Um, what about the one loft scene? What do you like? Do you like one loft racing? I know you and I met in Hoosier at the
Yeah,
2022 Hoosier. You and Frank
2 years
came
ago.
there, and so we got to hang out a little bit. Are you expanding out into other races, or you just what races are you targeting? What do you think about one loft?
Well, I do like the one loft races, but I mean, for me, they're a little expensive, to be able to send out as many as I would like. So every year I try to send out like six or eight. I mean, I really don't send out too many. I've seen some success in the numbers that I've sent out, but obviously, if I could send out more, I would love to. But I fly the New England Derby. It's a local race here. I usually enter like one or two a year. I put probably one or two a year in the Hoosier. And then this year I put four in the Florida Derby. And I mean, I did relatively okay for the numbers, but I mean, against 4,000 pigeons, it's hard to stay at the top at four.
Yeah, it's a big race.
Oh yeah. No, it's exciting down there. I just wish it was a little slower.
Yeah. Did you get to attend?
No, I wanted to go, but it just didn't line up this year. I'm hoping next year I can go down there. I want to go to the Hoosier again. I mean, the Hoosier was so fun. I mean, that whole weekend was so much fun. I mean, I didn't get a bird on the day in the Hoosier. My one didn't come home on the day, but I mean, the whole event, going to Gannis's house, I mean, watching the race, seeing all those people come from all over the place. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, it's an awesome event. Have you been back since I saw you?
No, I didn't go back this year because we were training the IF convention birds. The Hoosier was like, I don't know, maybe a week and a half before the IF convention. So I mean, for me to take that 4 days off and not train
That'd been tough.
since the workout, yeah.
Yeah, one lofts are tough. They are expensive, especially, you got certain guys that can send 30 bird team versus your, 2 to 4, whatever you're sending. It's tough. One loss a tough game. Um, what are the foundation of the pigeons that you're breeding from now? Is it all from Frank? Have you started branching out and selecting some imports? Where are your birds coming from?
Yeah, so my base family I mean, it's been there since I pretty much started with pigeons, is I call it the perfect diamond family. So it's funny, we bought the grandmother of Perfect Diamond when I was 5 years old. She was the first pigeon we ever bought. We went down to a guy's house. Again, it was on the bulletin at the club. There was pigeons for sale. and we bought a pair of birds for $10. And, we used to show them, they'd win all the shows. We have trophies, 4 feet tall from those. And I pretty much I kept one over all the years, and that's the perfect diamond hen. So that's one family that I try to work with.
Is that a
And
dark check or black?
she's a solid black.
Solid
Yeah.
black. Got it. Yeah, I've seen that picture on Facebook, I think.
Yeah. So she's a solid black. So she pumps out, blacks, blue bars, blue checks, whatever cock I pair her to. I don't have many blacks, so usually it's about 50-50 with her.
Right.
And then from Frank, I'm pretty heavy on his DeRosa blondes. He does really well at the DeRosa blondes. The freak birds I've had a lot of success with crossing back into the perfect diamond family. And then this year I started adding a couple birds from Pipa along the Porsche lines. I
Cool.
bought I bought a brother to Dolly, a sister to Wacko Freddy, things along that line, but not too many of them.
No, but getting pigeons like that and incorporating into what you have, that's a good way to go about it. And those birds, if you look across the one loft landscape, they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean Mike Gannis, when I was lucky enough, he came over and visited when he picked up Miss Debbie, and he came over to the house and he was telling me how he bought his birds. I mean, obviously he likes to buy the winner, and
Hmm.
then if you can't buy the winner, then he says buy a sibling or try to buy the parents or buy something around that,
Yeah.
because that stays close to the winning tree as possible. And when he said that, I pretty much just said, you know what, I don't want to waste my time with anything else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've gone out and I bought a few performance birds from Victoria Falls, like top 20 final race winners, top 10 super race pigeons, siblings to car average winners, the old $1 million. And then I bought one from Mike off of Hallover, which is his $1 million winner. So I've been trying to buy off of like big winners for when I am ready to send out to these big one off races and send more than, couple.
Right.
So I'm ready. I just got to be able to send out more eventually.
Right. Yeah, it's a challenge. But it sounds like you're behind the scenes really planning for it. People need to watch out for sure because you're adding a lot of quality into what you already have. You're a big guy. Did you put Frank in a headlock to get him to give you the freak? How did that go down?
No, so it's funny. I had a plan to buy the freak from him in 2020. I wanted to buy the freak. That was my goal. I wanted the freak. And he ended up selling her to Jim Gabler.
Hmm.
And I saw her come up online that Jim was selling her last spring. And I got to buy this hen. I said, I can't. I mean, I remember her. She's like one of the first birds I handled at Frank's. And I just fell in love with her. And I made it my personal mission to buy that hen. And I did get her. And she's just as awesome as she was when Frank had her. But unfortunately, she's not laying, which kind of stinks. But I mean, just to say that I have her is enough for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe she'll lay this year, but she didn't lay at all last year. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah, that happens sometimes to the best of them. I've had that happen with some hens that, you know, they're laying just fine and then all of a sudden they just run out. But you never know when that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, she's old. I mean, she's a 2012. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, that's
she's
getting up
getting
there.
close to the end, if not the end. So
Right.
if I can if I can get one egg, I mean that's all I need. But
Yeah, that would be great, right? Um, Young birds last year, did you fly club level?
now last year, my whole goal was the IF convention.
So
I
tell
just
me
trained the
about the IF
birds.
convention. How'd that go? You know, you had to train from your loft and all that.
Yeah, so basically I trained him out myself and I put him on the training truck on the weekends for, group experience. And I got him out to 200 miles and they were doing great, but the winds unfortunately weren't really in our favor for the race. And as you know, flying club, if you don't have the winds, I mean, you may
Oh,
as well kiss it goodbye.
right. Yeah.
We did get most of them home. Um, I mean, I wish things worked out a little differently, especially in the beginning, but I mean, overall with what's left, I'm happy with what's here.
That's good. Well, since you are a younger guy, what advice do you have for young guys that are going to be watching this? Because I do have some of them in the audience, and maybe even older guys that are just starting out. What's the best way for people to get started? Obviously, if they follow your blueprint to get a mentor, but what else do you have?
Well, I guess the biggest piece of advice that I have is don't take birds from everyone. Because when I originally first joined Facebook, that's basically what I did. I took birds from everyone. And in 2018, I had an illness run through and it wiped me out totally. And maybe it's because I brought in all these birds. I don't know. I'm assuming it is.
Right,
But I mean, if you bring in birds from everyone and it wipes you out like that and you're brand new, I mean, chances are you're probably not going to be in the sport much longer.
right.
So I would say go to someone you trust, someone respected in your area, and build off of what they have first. Because it's basically what I did after. I mean, I went to Frank and I got some of his birds. And I mean, since then it's been all up.
Yeah. Do you have a proudest moment in the racing pigeon sport that you've had, whether it's one loft or club or, selecting a bird? Is there a moment you can think back that you're the most proud of?
Well, yeah, I guess in 2017 we had a 250-mile race. And I was a junior member back then. My sister was a junior member, and my dad flew in the club also as an adult member. And we were calling around asking if there were birds around because we didn't really have any. We had a couple, and all the best guys in the club, oh no, we don't have them. We don't have them. There's no birds around. And we walked into the club and there was 13 day birds, and we had seven of them.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, we were just flying with what we had. I mean, there was nothing special, no system, but they all came down from that perfect diamond hen, whether they were children or grandchildren. I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. That's
But
awesome. So excuse me, does your dad still fly?
yeah, me and him, we fly together.
Good. That's awesome. So you guys get along really, really well and can,
Yeah, he beats me most weeks, which is unfortunate. He won the combine before I won the combine.
so you fly together, but different teams?
Yeah,
Okay. But same backyard, just different
yeah,
teams.
same backyard, same loft. We fly two teams, and he always seems to beat me, and I don't know how. It drives me bananas.
I've been there, man. When my dad and I flew down here together, or separate teams but same area, uh, I was always looking to beat him, and it seemed like he'd always get a bird just before me or just trapped just ahead of me. But eventually the tide does turn.
Yeah, the worst part is we didn't even get to see our combine winner come in.
Oh, really? What happened?
So I was at baseball, and it's a 200. I see the winds are in our favor, so I'm in the dugout. I'm like hiding from my coach, texting my dad at times. And he says, yeah, he says, we got one, but I didn't even see it come in. He said, oh, it was a 12-18. It came in. And I'm like, oh, that's a good bird today. 15 minutes later, we get two more. So we're thinking, oh, we're shut out. Like they weren't coming. So whatever, so be it. And Frank texts me. He says, oh, I clocked my first one at 12:56. What time did you get him? And now I'm starting to think, okay,
Pretty good bird.
we might be onto something here because I had three ahead of him. He's only 20 miles behind me. And he was like, well, you're so far out ahead. He's like, I'm not even going to report tonight. He's like, we have to go to dinner. He's like, it looks like you had a good race. And I took the first three in the combine and he would have been fourth. And the kicker is all three of those birds were from his birds. So it is fun beating him with his own birds
Right, right.
sometimes.
Yeah.
He gets me most of the time.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's tough. How many people are in your club and then in your greater combine?
So in the club, I mean, I want to say we have about 20, maybe 25. It just
Good.
depends on who ships.
Yeah.
In the combine, there's probably about 70. And then there's another combine, the Boston Concourse. There's probably about another 25 or 30 guys up there. So altogether, I mean, if everyone flew that was registered as a member, we'd have about 100, but it never seems to work out that way.
It varies season to season who's going to be able to do it. That's
Yeah.
the same story here. We had in the Federation like 200 at one point, but it's dwindled with people passing away and getting out, or some guys are only young bird flyers. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Yep.
What is your preferred training regiment whenever you're able to devote your time like you are now? I know you had the IF convention. What were you gonna be with this new group of birds? You're gonna probably fly, I would guess, this fall.
Yeah. So, I mean, my plan is I'm going to go back to how I did it when I was in college because it seemed to work out pretty good for me. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Um, I used to come back from school and I'd let them out the third week of May. And then as soon as they kitted up, I just took them on the road and I just started training. Because around here, the hawks are really bad.
Yeah.
And if I keep them around, then I'm going to lose them all. So the fastest I can get them on the road, the better for me. And then I get them out to about 80 miles by July 1st. And then I shut them down for the whole month of July. So I fly in the dark. So I let them molt out, just get through the back end of that molt in July. I avoid the heat and they're already trained out. So once I start up again in August, it's really just getting them back into shape.
And for those who may be listening and don't know what the dark means, tell us your process for darkening the young birds.
Yeah, so the dark system, it's systems in young birds is just hindering the amount of hours of daylight that the pigeons get. So the dark system, you allow them to get 8 to 10 hours of daylight. So for me, they'd get to sunrise to 1 p.m. And then I'd shut the curtains in the loft, I'd shut the windows, and it'd be just dark enough to be able to read a newspaper. So if they got hot or whatever, they could still go down and get a drink. But most of the time, they just stayed up on the perches. And
And
then
the goal is for them not to molt too heavy.
the goal is for them to not really, they don't drop their flights
Like,
because, yeah, the dark, it's basically winter time to them in their head. So they don't drop their primaries or their secondaries. They really just go through the body.
right.
And then like versus the light system where you put them on, some people do 24 hours, some people do 18 hours, and that'll get them through their flights. And that's what'll excel that.
So are you doing any flight pulling, or you want them to keep those flights when they start the season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't pull any flights. I mean, in the past few years when I have done the dark, some of them do molt. I mean, you can't really stop it.
Right.
I mean, I've had some molt 8 flights on the dark, and I've had some molt none. It just they're just pigeons. I don't know.
Right.
You can't really stop them from dropping. But I mean, I like the dark. I mean, I think my returns are better on the dark. It's because everyone's on the same page. I mean, I'd rather be missing 1 flight than 1,000 body feathers.
Right.
And I mean, they handle like old birds, they act like old birds, and you can really do well in the dark if you devote the time to it.
And I should ask this earlier, but when are you mating your breeders up? Uh, is it something you do November, December? Do you wait till January? Some people wait till February.
Yeah, so I pair early. I paired December 1st this year, which I think might have been a little early for me. I mean, normally I pair around New Year's Day, but this year, pretty much my whole first round, I sent out to whether it was like futurity races, one loft races. So basically, my second round will be my first round in my loft.
Right.
So I've done it in the past where I've sent out the second round, but then I have a gap between the first and the third round. And I've been fooling around with it. But I think this year, I think with everything at least being in the same couple months, I think it'll help with training.
And how many are you raising that you're going to personally fly?
I'm thinking I'll probably start out with 80.
It's a good number.
Yeah, 80. I mean, I think 100's a lot. I mean, after last year at the convention, I mean, I had about 120, and I mean, that was a lot of pigeons.
Yeah.
I think,
It's a lot
I
of
mean,
work.
oh yeah, a lot of work, a lot of feed, a lot of cleaning. Um, Yeah, if I can start training with about 65, I would be happy.
Right.
The Hawks really do, they tune me up here pretty good. We're surrounded by woods on all four sides, so there's really not much you can do.
I'm in that same boat. We have really bad Cooper Hawks. I have woods surrounding my area, and new hawks move in all the time, and it's brutal, especially for the first couple weeks you're letting your young birds out. They just come from every direction. So I know what that's like. It's tough.
Yeah, we have falcons about half a mile from the house as well. So, I mean, if that's why I start training as early as I do, because if I just need to get them out of the yard as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the falcons come down, take one out of the sky. You see a bird fall from the sky. I've seen Coopers take them out of the sky. I've seen red tails hit them in the trees when they first go out. So
Yeah.
for me, it's just the fastest I can get them out of here, the better I'm off.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. It's one of the hardest parts is having to deal with those hawks. I mean, I when we had the old birds out yesterday, the moment I looked around, I kind of check. I like to kind of do a perimeter check.
Yeah.
I let them out. The moment I let them out, here comes, I don't even know where it came from, but it is right on the tail of one of my favorite hens, one of my better young hens from last year, and
Ugh.
there's nothing you can do but watch and hope they can
Yeah, I
maneuver.
hope they get away. That's all it is. Yeah. Do you have a sky tube at all?
I don't
Because
know what that is.
I mean, I guess if you drive by the dealership and you see that big, like
Oh, yeah.
inflatable tube.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
so I used that last year and the year before. I used it for the last 2 years. And I feel like with that, the Hawks don't strike nearly as much on the loft or close to it. So, I mean, it's something that I've used. Frank is the one that showed me it, of course. Um, but I mean, I used to lose 30, 35 babies a year just before I could get them road training. And I was able to cut that number in half with that sky tube. Because I mean, it's big. It's 20 feet tall. My neighbors think I'm nuts. I mean, they can see it over like the bushes in our yard. And
Yeah.
but the Hawks, I think they're scared of it. So I mean, if they're close to the loft, I think they're a lot safer.
So the sky tube, the young birds get used to it. They get accustomed to it.
Yeah. So in order to get them used to it, I walk them out in the aviary up top where the traps are, and I just run that for 15 minutes. And then I turn it off and call them in. The next day I'll do the same thing. I just do 15-minute cycles. But I try to do it at different times of the day so the Hawks don't get used to seeing it come on at the same time. Because eventually, I mean, race days on Saturdays, it's going to be on the same time every day.
Right.
And the longer I can prolong them getting used to it, the better.
Yeah, that makes sense. My partner Garrett, and he's just northeast of Denver. He has one of those that he does that same thing. It pops up and down. He also has a like a mannequin dummy type of thing. It looks like Frankenstein, and he wheels it. He wheels it around his property on a dolly. So he moves it around to
That's
where
funny.
it looks like somebody's standing there too. So he does both those things. I haven't personally tried it, but that's a good idea. It's something I need to consider. I guess my problem is getting the old birds used to it, not letting it spook them. But if they're around it enough, I assume they adapt like they do with all things. Pigeons are good about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say within a week's time, they're probably used to it. Not even. I mean, you can start to see it with the young birds. I mean, the first day when you run it, I mean, they're pretty spooked and they want nothing to do with it. But, the second day, they're a little more used to it. Third day, then eventually you'll see them just relaxing, sunbathing with the wing up. But they get used to it pretty fast.
Yeah, their neighbors would really think you're crazy if you surround your whole property with those. Just a bunch of them hopping up and down.
Oh, yeah. One of the guys in our club has two of them, and he has them right next to his loft. I can only imagine what his neighbors think.
When you're racing, excuse me, when you're racing, do you do any sort of system? I know Frank is very much on feeding and training more so than, he doesn't like mating up or anything like that. Do you do anything different, or do you fly into a perch or to a box? How are you flying your young birds?
No, young birds, I leave them all together. I just fly them right to the box. I mean, I
They
do
have,
lock them in the aviary like Frank does.
yeah. Do they have like a box perch that they do individually, or are they big full boxes? What size are we talking about?
So my box perches, they're an 8 by 8 by 8 square. And I think I mean, they're not big enough for two birds to be in it, but I think it makes them feel secure
Yeah,
because it's kind of tight, it's like maybe that. And
right.
they can go in, they can lay down, they can stand up. And then I have another wall. I think they're 11 by 11. Man, they're only maybe 4 inches deep, 6 inches deep. They're not too much bigger, but they give them options. I mean, if I had to go back to the same box every day and I didn't really fit, I'd probably be pretty upset.
Right.
So I give them options. They can roost wherever they want, but most of the time they're all in those small boxes.
Do you find that they select a box and stick to it? They're pretty territorial over it.
Yeah. So last year, my best convention bird, he always sat. There's one box that has no divider, so it's just a double wide. So it's 16 by 8 by 8, and he would go up there. And that was his box. It did not matter. 10 could go up there. He's going to fight them all off.
Yeah,
And then, like for me, all my best ones are usually in like the top couple rows. And you can go in there at night and you can almost bet your life that they're going to be in that same box.
yeah, yeah. It's funny how territorial pigeons are, and I think it's a way of motivation. Having them come home to their box and or their perch or whatever it is. They want to get back, and like you said, he makes sure that those birds get out of it. He's going to get home and make sure it's secure, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a loft design that you learned from Frank, or do you have a loft design that your dad helped you set up, or how did that start for you?
Well, our first loft, I mean, it was owned by someone who raced. I don't know how they raced out of it. We've tried to figure it out. He did everything out of one loft: breeding, racing, old birds, young birds, cocks, hens. I don't know how he did it, but I use that loft just for breeding. It has 20 boxes and then 60 box perches for, I'm assuming, where he flew.
Right,
Um, and then our other small breeding loft has been rearranged maybe 5 times in the last 10 years. I mean, we're always changing it,
right,
get something we like. And there's 9 boxes in one side. There's a big aviary door, maybe 2 by 3 square. And then there's maybe 30 box perches. And then the young bird loft there's 151 perches for about 80 birds, 100 birds, whatever I have, but there's
right.
plenty of boxes. I actually built that loft before I met Frank, but I guess if I were to change it, I probably would just put box perches in there. I wouldn't put the other style perch because I think the birds are happier in those than the other ones, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. More space, like you said, to have as their territory. What characteristic traits are you looking when you're handling a pigeon? Do you have something that you like when you're handling a pigeon? Is there certain when you get them in your hand? Is there something that catches your eye that you like?
Hmm.
Because you
Yeah,
said
so I mean,
you like the way the freak handles, and you're memorized how the freak handles, and that's your idea of a perfect pigeon. What can you describe? What you think's the best thing? What you like the best?
well, the first thing I look for is if the bird's small. I'm not big into big pigeons. I don't like big pigeons. They don't fly well around here. So, excuse me. I try to select for medium to small. I mean, right away, if it's big, I tend to not like it as much. And then I noticed the feather quality right away. I mean, the really good ones have unbelievable feather quality. I mean, they'll slide right out of your hand. I mean, they're just so silky smooth. Um, I look for the muscle. I want it to be nice and supple. I don't want it to be, too hard, too soft, nice right in between. Uh, a flexible back I like the most. I mean, with the old families like the Huskin Van Riels, the Sions, the real old families, I mean, they're big. Like the backs are like this wide. I mean, they're big pigeons, they're strong pigeons. But I've noticed over time, I mean, I've handled so many different $1 million winners that come from quarantine, and even the best ones always have a flexible back, which is strong, but it's flexible.
Right.
So I look for that too.
Do you take
Obviously,
that off the tail movement, or is
yeah,
that something? Okay.
yeah, the tail movement. Like my best racer that I've ever flown here, I mean, if she ever was graded, I mean, people would tell you to get rid of her. I mean, she's big, she's awkward. You know, her tail doesn't stay as a one pin tail. I mean, there's nothing about her that's really nice, but she flew like the wind.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it might be a 1 in a million case, but I mean, I've handled a few of like the super race winners, grand average winners, final race winners of these big one loft races, and they're all pretty much the same. They're all that small to medium, flexible back, tight vents, nice muscle, really nice feather quality. And that's really what I look for.
So you're using all these birds that you're handling, they're winning these races or one lofts as a blueprint, and you're finding it to be more medium to small, rather
Yeah.
than medium to large or large.
I mean, I've seen big birds fly well. I'm not saying they don't. They just don't for me around here. But most of the time, they're all pretty much that small to medium. From what I've noticed, Frank's best widowers, his hens, his old cocks, they're all really small to medium. So I look at that and I'm like, well, why would I breed something different?
Right.
And it's made me very hard on my breeders. I'm very hard in what I demand, what I expect for results. So, I mean, every year we look at them, we're like, okay, Little Finn. I think that was the Victoria Falls winner maybe 2 years ago. I love that hen when I handled her. She was awesome. And I looked at my hens when I came home and I'm like, well, this one's not as nice as Little Finn was. And she just came out of quarantine. I'm like, why would I mess with something like that?
Right.
I just put it aside, put it aside, put it aside. And then eventually I try to get to the same type
Right.
to where all my breeders are small to medium. They're all that nice supple muscle, good feather quality. And I mean, that's me. I mean, it's just from what I've seen and experienced. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this for 4 years. I mean, there's pretty much everyone has been flying longer than me. So, I mean, what works for me might not work for you.
No, that's the fun part of this, is that there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But I think that you have a unique perspective, being able to handle all those birds and to learn from Frank. And, um, that's the way to excel straight to the top, is to have a strict criteria that you select from. And I agree with you that a lot of the best pigeons that I've raced have been that medium size. Those seem to be the pigeons that can adapt to whatever the race day requires. I've had some large pigeons that have done well and raced well out to a certain distance, but here in Oklahoma, we fly 100 to 600 miles in old birds. So I need a pigeon that can go all distance. That's what I want. So a medium-sized pigeon is going to give me the best chance for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you that you can have pigeons of all sizes. I think the one thing we can't measure in our hands, when you were talking about that hen of yours that could fly really well and she wouldn't win a show, we can't measure their brains and their homing ability and their passion for coming
Yeah.
home.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I never liked her. I mean, I weaned her and she was just a two-hander. She was like this. I was like, oh, I do not like this pigeon. And I tried to lose her. I mean, I gave her every chance to get lost, and she never did. And she was my first bird, I think, 8 weeks in a row.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? I'm starting to like her a little more now. And
Yeah.
what's good is I'm really happy. She doesn't breed her size. She breeds small to medium.
Right.
And she bred a top all distance ace pigeon last year. She bred a winner out in Chicago. She bred a winner here. So I mean, if she did breed her size, probably wouldn't have given her a chance, but I mean, she's been really good. You can't measure brain.
What's her background? What's this hen's background?
So her father is Casbor.
Hmm.
They're middle distance, greater middle distance
Right.
in Europe. And the mother is the freak line. So I only paired them together because their numbers were the same.
Oh, really?
So the father was 2302 and the mother was 302. So I said, "Oh, look at that, 302, 302." I said, "I'll
Yeah.
put them together." And I mean, it was a great pair. And some of my better matings have come from that, which is funny enough because I would never even consider putting them together. And I bred a combine winner by 14 minutes off of that.
Wow.
It's just luck. I said, "Oh, that's funny. 383 and 383." We put them together and it's worked. It looks like a stroke of genius, but it's really just I thought it was funny. So I put them together.
I like that. No, but what what you're also doing there is you're taking the Casbor blood, crossing it into the freak blood. You're crossing two different really good families together, and that seems to me, as Frank, I'm sure you've heard Frank say it a lot, that the best pigeons are crosses. When you look at the best racing pigeons of all time, they're crosses. So I think that's what you're talking about. There's, yeah, you're going off of numbers, but you're also crossing, and
Yeah.
I think that makes a difference.
all of all of Frank's best ever really have been crosses. I mean, you can look at every influential breeder in the world. We can start now. Porsche, Kittle, Best Kittle, they're all crosses. You can go back to like the Cannibal, 231, 178, the Golden Matins. I mean, you can just keep going on and on. And they're all crosses.
Yeah.
So I mean, why I don't inbreed either. That's another thing. I don't inbreed. I don't line breed unless it's for sales. Like with the perfect diamond blood, I try to inbreed them a little bit for the sales, but everything is a cross. I don't keep inbreds for myself. I just cross, and just keep crossing. So every year I try to bring in something a little different just so I can cross it in. I
Yeah.
might only have one bird from the family, but it's a cross. So I just cross it in, see what happens, and just go off of performance every year.
That's a good way to do it. Yeah, I like the Casbor blood a lot. I visited Marcel Verkamen when I was in Belgium, and he had some Casbor, line bred Casbors, and I just love the way they handled. So I brought him back here and have incorporated it into my bloodline that we've had going for over 20 years. And so, like you said, you got to cross out. So we had some our bloodline that needed to be crossed out. And I put them with them, and they've bred the Texas Center Summer Convention winner and the Winter Texas Center Convention winner, just crossing those bloodlines. And Louisiana Jane's one of them that I have, and Texas Blaze. So that I love that Casbor blood crossed in. It seems to really be good still to this day.
And they're great young birds and they're great old birds. I mean, I've seen them win everywhere. They've done everything. They're time tested. It's a no-brainer for me.
Well, and you said you've only been doing this 4 years and you're very humble, but to me, your ability to list off those pigeons from the past tells me that you study and you pay attention and you're a grinder. And I like that a lot. I think people watching, especially new people to the sport, spending time online on websites, reading about pedigrees and reading about famous pigeons will help you understand what people are talking about, because it's frustrating for new people who go sit down with pigeon guys and they're speaking a different language because you're speaking about pedigrees and numbers and band numbers and pigeons, and I'm sure you spend a lot of time studying, right?
Yeah, I mean, every day I probably I look at about 10 different auction sites a day just to even though I'm not buying all the time, but just to make sure I'm keeping up with, what's doing good. And I joke with Frank that I know his birds better than he knows his birds because when I started, I mean, I read every word on his website probably 50 times.
Yeah.
I mean, just learning his birds, learning why he crossed that with that, why this did well with that. And then I started doing it with mine. I mean, my dad bet me that I couldn't pick a bird. He picked a bird out of the loft, and I had to guess which bird it was. And if I forget what the bet was for, but he went into any access to any loft. He could pick a bird, and I have to tell him what it is in the pitch black, and I picked.
You're blindfolded basically. You have to pick by hand.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I try. I mean, being an athlete, I was always competitive. I wanted the upper hand, and I figure if I know everything I need to know about my birds and my competitions, then it might give me an advantage. So I try to study as much as possible.
Yeah, I could tell that right away, listing off what you're listing off, and the way your competitive nature is. That's a great way to go about it, and I think you're going to have nothing but success going forward. And um, I want to branch off because we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but you mentioned that you travel a lot doing cornhole competitively. Is that true?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So it makes sense now because you have a sports background, especially pitching. You have to really have an arm for pitching. So with cornhole, how did that translate over? Tell us about, and how do you become professional?
So for me, it was I couldn't do anything overhand anymore because
Rotator cuff.
after I tore my rotator cuff, I couldn't pitch anymore. So I said, well, I need something to do that's underhand because I can go underhand. So I found cornhole and I was hooked. I was like, I hate losing. So I mean, I try to get as good as I can
Right.
at whatever I do because I don't like to lose. I mean, like with pigeons, if I lose a race, I'm miserable until the next week because I lost the race.
Yeah.
I should have done better.
Right.
I just have the same mentality with cornhole. And then eventually I said, well, I'm good around here, but how good am I on a national perspective? So then I started traveling and I got humbled pretty quick, but it motivates you to get better and keep working every day.
So how long have you been at it?
Well, let's see. I tore my rotator cuff 2 years ago. So probably 2 years I've been
Oh
doing it.
wow. So you're still kind of getting at it.
Yeah.
Earn.
I mean, like with pigeons too, there's guys that have been playing cornhole their entire life that
Yeah.
have multiple years of experience over me, but I'm just numb-headed and I want to win.
Yeah.
So
So you're gonna keep at it. You
yeah, I
enjoy
do
it.
what I can to win.
So when you're tossing those bean bags, are you just sinking cornhole after cornhole? Or are you trying to hit it on the land? Because I love the game too. I'm nowhere near professional, but it's fun.
Yeah, so I mean, I've lost games where I've only missed really a couple bags that didn't go on the hole.
Wow.
I mean, you wouldn't believe what's out there for talent. I mean, I didn't think there was this much talent, but there is. So, yeah, it really I say it's my hobby outside of pigeons, but I get too competitive and then I make everything my job to get better.
Yeah.
So,
Well, to make it collegiately in baseball, you have to have some serious competition within you, and to rise in the pigeon sport to the top level, you have to be competitive. So I understand. I'm the same way, and I when I was younger, my early 20s racing, I would let it ruin my whole week if it didn't go well too. But I promise you, in time, you'll learn to have a 24-hour rule where you can be upset about it for 24 hours, then you move on. That's what I've had to do. It's easier said than done, but
yeah, with pitching, it was all right. Forget the last one. Just worry about the balls in your hand.
right.
Figure it out, throw a strike.
Yeah.
Cornhole. I missed a bag. Okay, I still have one in my hands. Put this one in. But with pigeons, I don't know. You work all week, the training, the feeding, the preparation, and then you're 10 minutes behind, and you're like, I can't believe I was 10 minutes behind.
Yeah.
It's just I don't sleep the night after the race. I mean, I just think of what I can do better this week. And it drives me crazy.
Yeah. I get it. Well, is there something you'd like to add to the interview that I haven't brought up or talked about, or anything I haven't covered or missed?
Uh, well, I guess to any new fanciers, just read, research, ask questions. I mean, one thing my grandmother always used to say to me was, you have two ears and one mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So listen more than you speak.
Right.
So, I mean, that's really helped me, I think, progress as fast as I have, is just reading, asking questions. I mean, Frank probably hated me the first month I worked for him because I asked a lot of whys and why is that? That doesn't make sense. Like, why that? Why this? Why that? And I mean, he was a broken record for a long time, just repeating the same things. Just do this, do this. He wrote things out. I mean, don't take it for a grain of salt because I mean, a lot of these really experienced guys aren't going to be here, and who knows? I mean, anything can happen. So pay attention, read, research, and use your head.
Yeah,
Common sense. Don't make it too fancy.
I love it. Where can people find you? Website, Facebook? What do you have for them?
Yeah, so I have my Facebook is Landing Strip Loft. It's LandingStrip Loft. And then my website is www.landingstriploft.com.
Got it.
So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I'm an open book.
And you sell pigeons as well. If someone's interested in buying something from you, they can contact you there and probably see some of your birds on the website and stuff.
Yeah, I have I every year I've been trying to make a breeding catalog. So all my breeders are online with their pedigrees, descriptions, accolades, what have it be. So I don't sell a lot here and there, but there's always something available if someone needs it.
All right, Guy. Well, I'm sure you'll see Frank pretty quick. Tell Frank I said hello, and I appreciate you
Yeah,
coming
will
on. And
do.
we'll have to get an update from you when your old bird season gets going. Are you doing? Did you say this year or next year?
Yeah, this year I'll be
Okay.
flying.
So,
We start, I think, in 5 weeks.
okay.
So hopefully Frank won't beat me up too bad. If he watches this, take it easy.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to have you back on to update us on how you're doing with the old birds, and hopefully you can get Frank a time or two and beat him. But I know how challenging it is up there. But one of these days I'll have to come up there and see you guys in person. That'd be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, you're always welcome.
but I appreciate the time, Guy, and landingstriplofts.com and Facebook landing strip lofts. So, all right. Well, I appreciate it. I know the audience is going to enjoy this one, and I like having some young guys like me on. You're a little younger than me, but we're still somewhat close. But I appreciate your time and thanks for coming on. We'll have you back.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm happy to come back anytime.